The dense jungles of Burma, 1944, hid secrets darker than any enemy ambush. One entire division, trained and disciplined, entered the green abyss, yet never returned. The enemy never saw it coming, and no one expected the jungle itself to claim lives silently, efficiently, and completely. Shocking as it seems, men who had faced bullets, artillery, and fire now faced a force far more relentless, nature itself. Forbidden paths through the thick undergrowth, hidden swamps and treacherous ravines became invisible traps, claiming men without witness or trace. Rejected warnings about the jungle's deadly unpredictability had been ignored, dismissed as exaggeration or caution. By the first few days, the soldiers realized their world had transformed into a labyrinth where every rustle could signal death, every shadow a hidden threat. How one division could vanish entirely became a question whispered in every camp, a mystery no one could explain. Secret reconnaissance and supply operations failed repeatedly to locate them, radio signals swallowed by the dense canopy, leaving only silence and fear behind. Impossible terrain and relentless humidity tested every skill, every instinct, and every ounce of courage, forcing men to improvise or perish. Shocking accounts from nearby units described eerie quiet, areas once marched through now completely devoid of sound or life, as if the jungle had erased every footprint. Forbidden fears, disease, starvation, ambush, or unseen enemies haunted every mind. Rejected theories abounded, each darker than the last, yet the full truth remained tantalizingly out of reach. Never expected by anyone, the disappearance of the division confounded commanders and historians alike, raising chilling questions about nature's invisible power. Shocking truth revealed only in fragments hinted at misfortune, illness, exhaustion, and sporadic encounters, yet no complete record existed. Secret reports found tattered journals, abandoned weapons, and scattered supplies, fragments of a story swallowed by the forest. Forbidden speculation flourished, whispering possibilities of mass ambush, disease, or worse. Rejected assumptions about their fate offered no comfort. Official records were incomplete, amplifying the mystery. By the end of the first week, it became clear that something unprecedented had occurred. An entire unit, gone without a trace, leaving families and comrades desperate for answers. Impossible as it seemed, the jungle had asserted dominance, teaching harsh lessons about nature, discipline, and vulnerability. Shocking legends grew. Tales of men entering the forest never to return, whispered among soldiers and civilians alike. Secret strategies, letters, and diaries hinted at moments of ingenuity, courage, and discipline, yet all vanished into the unforgiving wilderness. Forbidden errors, overexertion, misjudgment, or ignoring environmental cues were meticulously avoided whenever possible, but the jungle claimed those who faltered. Rejected paths, shortcuts, and miscalculations became fatal, emphasizing that survival required constant vigilance. How one division, trained for battle, could vanish without trace revealed a terrifying lesson that the most disciplined soldiers are not immune to nature's unrelenting power. Never had the army encountered a force so invisible yet so deadly, where training, courage, and preparation offered no guarantee of survival. Shocking as the unfolding story was, it would shape future tactics, survival strategies, and the collective memory of all who entered Burma's deadly jungles. Secretly, the forest observed silently, watching every move, every breath, every choice, a merciless witness to human vulnerability. Forbidden thoughts of surrender were silenced by duty and training, rejected impulses replaced with careful observation and cautious movement. The soldiers entered a world where maps and plans mattered less than instinct, awareness, and unity. How one division could disappear completely remains one of the most haunting mysteries of World War II, a story of fear, endurance, and the lethal power of nature that would never be forgotten. As the vanished division pressed deeper into Burma's suffocating jungle, each day became a test of endurance, wit, and sheer will. Soldiers slogged through thick mud, tangled vines, and sweltering heat, every step a battle against exhaustion and uncertainty. Forbidden shortcuts through seemingly open paths were wisely avoided, yet the dense canopy and hidden ravines continued to challenge even the most experienced scouts. Rejected assumptions about the terrain's safety forced commanders to constantly adapt, recalibrate routes, and reconsider strategies that once seemed reliable. How men trained for combat could be so utterly vulnerable to environmental hazards alone became painfully clear. Secret survival techniques, gleaned from guides and previous expeditions, offered fleeting advantages, but the jungle remained an unrelenting adversary, its quiet menace masking countless dangers. Impossible as it seemed, disease, dehydration, and relentless heat claimed more energy than any skirmish, pushing soldiers to the brink of physical and mental collapse. Shocking fatigue blurred perception, forcing improvisation in navigation, rationing, and shelter construction. Forbidden errors, such as misjudging swampy ground or ignoring early signs of exhaustion, were avoided wherever possible, replaced with cautious deliberation and methodical movement. Rejected instincts to rush or force progress through dangerous areas saved lives but could not entirely prevent losses from hidden perils. Never had a unit experienced such a confluence of threats. Environmental, psychological, and logistical, all magnified by isolation and relentless humidity. Shocking encounters with venomous snakes, leeches, and predatory animals underscored the jungle's omnipresent danger, making every step a calculated risk. Secret signals, landmarks, and improvised tracking methods became vital tools for navigation, helping men avoid unseen traps and maintain cohesion. Forbidden panic and despair were suppressed through discipline, leadership, and the thin thread of hope that extraction or relief might arrive. Rejected paths that seemed easy at first glance often led to hidden swamps, quicksand, or treacherous ravines, teaching the soldiers a harsh lesson about humility in the face of nature's power. How they endured heat, fatigue, and mental strain while continuing their mission became a testament to human resilience. Never had soldiers confronted an enemy so invisible yet so lethal, one that did not fight with bullets, but with entropy, isolation, and unyielding terrain. Shocking mental pressures arose as men watched comrades falter, feared disease, and navigated the same relentless obstacles that had trapped others before them. Secret alliances between small groups within the division, shared knowledge, and constant vigilance allowed temporary relief, yet the overarching threat remained. Forbidden mistakes, ignoring water scarcity, misjudging footing, or underestimating fatigue, could result in instant disappearance as the jungle claimed those who faltered. Rejected shortcuts, impulsive decisions, and overconfidence were replaced by careful observation, patience, and methodical movement. As days turned into a week, the oppressive weight of the jungle tested every aspect of endurance, from morale and camaraderie to skill and instinct. Never had men been pushed so far, where each moment required a delicate balance between caution and progress, survival and mission. Shocking in its subtlety, the jungle manipulated perception, creating illusions, hiding dangers, and amplifying the isolation of every soldier. Secret understanding of natural patterns, animal movements, water flow, terrain changes, became critical knowledge that distinguished those who survived from those who vanished. Forbidden thoughts of surrender, defeat, or despair were constantly countered by discipline orders and the slim hope of completing their mission. Rejected instincts to ignore warning signs, force marches, or dismiss the environment's power became rules etched into survival itself. How the division coped, adapted, and persevered despite exhaustion, disease, and an unforgiving landscape highlighted the delicate interplay of human skill and natural forces. Never had a journey demanded so much of both body and mind, reminding everyone that survival depended on vigilance, adaptability, and unwavering discipline. Shocking glimpses of fallen comrades, abandoned equipment, and sudden obstacles punctuated each day, reinforcing the jungle's dominance and teaching lessons that would echo long after the war. Secretly, the forest observed silently a merciless, patient force, testing courage, endurance, and human will against its endless green expanse. Burma 1944 was a jungle unlike any other. Towering trees, thick undergrowth, and unrelenting humidity created an environment both mesmerizing and deadly. The division that entered this green hell had been trained in conventional warfare, prepared for enemy fire, ambushes, and strategic maneuvers. Yet nothing could truly prepare them for the sheer scale and unpredictability of the jungle. Forbidden areas, hidden swamps and concealed ravines made every route a potential trap, every clearing a risk. Rejected advice from local guides, who warned of disease, venomous creatures and unstable terrain, was largely ignored in favor of standard military maps and procedures. How one could navigate such a complex, suffocating environment with hundreds of men became a logistical nightmare. Secret knowledge of edible plants, water sources and natural markers was crucial, yet sparse, leaving the soldiers constantly improvising survival techniques. Impossible terrain where paths twisted, vanished and reappeared unpredictably made orientation a constant struggle. Shocking humidity and torrential rains compounded the challenges, turning the ground into a treacherous mix of mud and quicksand. Forbidden missteps, like underestimating river currents or ignoring signs of disease, could result in immediate casualties. Rejected instincts to push forward aggressively had to be tempered with patience, careful observation and slow, methodical movement. The division's commanders struggled to maintain cohesion, morale and effective communication under conditions that broke even the most disciplined troops. Never had men been confronted with such a combination of natural hazards, isolation and psychological pressure, where every decision could mean life or death. Shocking wildlife encounters, from venomous snakes to predatory mammals, added another layer of constant threat, reminding soldiers that the jungle itself was an enemy. Secret strategies like marking trails, rationing resources and rotating sentries became essential for survival, teaching the division to rely on both training and intuition. Forbidden shortcuts and impulsive actions were eliminated from plans, replaced by disciplined, slow navigation designed to minimize exposure to unseen dangers. Rejected assumptions about the jungle's predictability forced commanders to adjust daily, anticipating hazards they could not see and reacting to conditions that changed by the hour. How men endured heat, humidity, fatigue and fear while maintaining operational readiness was a study in resilience, adaptation and the limits of human endurance. Never had soldiers faced a foe so silent, yet so lethal, a living environment capable of erasing entire units without a single gunshot. Shocking logistical challenges, from water scarcity to medical care, made each day a struggle, forcing men to conserve strength, ration supplies, and rely on their training. Secret observation of the terrain, understanding animal tracks and identifying subtle changes in vegetation became critical to survival, as the jungle offered no mercy to the unprepared. Forbidden zones, dangerous crossings, and treacherous terrain required constant vigilance, testing leadership and initiative at every level. Rejected notions of easy progress or predictable outcomes were replaced by caution, patience, and respect for nature's overwhelming power. As the days passed, the division learned that maps were insufficient, orders were fragile, and survival depended on every soldier's skill, discipline, and awareness. How one maintained mental focus amidst relentless environmental pressure was as critical as physical endurance, and small mistakes could prove fatal. Never had any unit been tested so thoroughly by conditions beyond human control, a silent adversary dictating the pace, strategy, and even the chance of survival itself. Shocking scenes of abandoned equipment, footprints fading into mud, and natural obstacles claimed without resistance underscored the jungle's dominance. Secret coordination, constant reassessment of plans and disciplined movement allowed the unit to adapt, but the shadow of danger never lifted. Forbidden complacency, overconfidence or misjudgment were deadly. Rejected routines gave way to flexible, responsive tactics, ensuring that the soldiers stayed alive, at least temporarily. The jungle of Burma proved that survival required more than bravery. It demanded knowledge, patience, observation, and relentless vigilance against an invisible but merciless enemy. As the days wore on, the division became increasingly aware that the jungle was not merely a backdrop, but an active, unpredictable force. Every step demanded constant attention. Every rustle or shadow could conceal peril. Forbidden areas, dense swamps, hidden ravines, and steep inclines tested not only physical stamina but also judgment, as miscalculations could prove fatal. Rejected strategies of forced marches or blind reliance on maps gave way to cautious, methodical movement, guided by both experience and instinct. How to balance the need for progress with the imperative of survival became a daily, relentless challenge. Secret techniques for navigation, such as observing animal tracks, listening for subtle environmental cues and marking safe passages, became vital lifelines. Impossible conditions, including torrential rainfall, oppressive heat, and venomous creatures, compounded the threat, wearing down even the most disciplined soldiers. Shocking fatigue blurred mental clarity, forcing improvisation in shelter construction, water collection, and food rationing. Forbidden mistakes like ignoring dehydration or overestimating terrain stability were meticulously avoided whenever possible, but the jungle claimed those who faltered. Rejected assumptions about the predictability of nature's hazards forced constant adaptation and vigilance. Never had a unit faced a scenario in which environmental mastery, careful planning, and physical endurance were simultaneously tested to such extremes. Shocking encounters with wild animals, from venomous snakes to aggressive predators, reminded men that the jungle's power extended beyond terrain and climate. It was a living, silent adversary. Secretly, the soldiers relied on observation, intuition, and the subtle guidance of experienced guides, learning that survival depended on blending human skill with respect for nature's unpredictability. Forbidden impatience, overconfidence, and neglect of safety protocols were replaced by caution, collaboration, and methodical decision-making. Rejected routines from previous campaigns were abandoned, as conventional military wisdom proved insufficient against the jungle's vast, unpredictable challenges. How the division maintained morale amid isolation, relentless danger, and uncertainty became a testament to human resilience. Never had men confronted a combination of threats so subtle yet lethal: unseen predators, hidden quicksands, sudden floods, disease, exhaustion, and the ever-present psychological strain of isolation. Shocking reports from small reconnaissance patrols highlighted the need for constant vigilance, revealing abandoned campsites, scattered supplies, and signs of disorientation among soldiers who had ventured ahead. Secret knowledge of terrain features, plant life, and animal behavior was crucial for navigation, resource management, and anticipating potential hazards. Forbidden complacency or rash decision-making could result in immediate consequences, reinforcing the necessity of patience, observation, and calculated risk. Rejected instincts to rush through difficult passages were replaced by careful, deliberate action designed to minimize exposure to danger. As the unit pressed forward, the jungle's relentless dominance became apparent, a force not fought with bullets but endured through vigilance, adaptability, and collective skill. How men balanced the need for movement with the imperative of safety became an exercise in constant assessment, improvisation, and teamwork. Never had such a complete integration of environment and human endurance been observed, where even the most disciplined soldiers faced mortality without enemy engagement. Shocking glimpses of fallen comrades, abandoned tools, and unexpected terrain obstacles served as reminders of the thin line between survival and disappearance. Secret collaboration, sharing of knowledge, and mutual vigilance allowed the unit to navigate some hazards successfully. Yet, the overarching threat of the jungle remained omnipresent. Forbidden shortcuts, risky assumptions, and overconfidence were methodically replaced with careful planning, strict adherence to observation, and respect for the forest's lethal capacity. Rejected errors and lessons from minor miscalculations gradually informed survival tactics, emphasizing adaptability, patience, and attention to detail. How men endured the unyielding environment, maintained cohesion, and persevered despite constant challenges reflected both the harsh reality of the jungle and the extraordinary human capacity for endurance. Never had soldiers been tested so thoroughly by invisible forces, where the jungle dictated pace, movement, and survival itself. Shocking as these conditions were, they created a crucible that would reveal the limits of human courage, discipline, and ingenuity. By the third week in Burma, the division faced the relentless tension of survival and operational demands simultaneously. Supply lines had become tenuous at best, with rations dwindling and ammunition scattered or damaged by the jungle's constant humidity. Soldiers endured constant psychological pressure, the fear of ambush blending seamlessly with the fear of starvation, dehydration, and disease. Forbidden decisions, such as attempting to cross unstable ground or rushing ahead without reconnaissance, could be fatal. Rejected assumptions about the safety of known paths were shattered by sudden floods, hidden quicksand, and treacherous ravines. How to continue the mission while preserving life became a daily, nerve-wracking dilemma. Secret patrols sent ahead often returned with little more than reports of dead ends, collapsed terrain, or signs of enemy presence, yet no clarity on the fate of missing soldiers emerged. Impossible as it seemed, the division's cohesion began to fray under constant environmental and logistical pressure. Shocking accounts of hallucinations, fatigue-induced mistakes, and the toll of relentless humidity revealed the mental strain as severe as the physical dangers. Forbidden shortcuts through overgrown paths were cautiously avoided, but even careful navigation could not guarantee safety. Rejected hopes of immediate relief or extraction forced commanders and soldiers to confront the brutal reality. They were alone in one of the deadliest jungles on the planet. Never had such a scenario presented itself, where human skill, discipline, and training were tested against an enemy so invisible, omnipresent, and utterly indifferent to human life. Shocking encounters with hidden enemy units, though sporadic, heightened tension, as men realized that combat readiness alone could not ensure survival. Secret coordination within squads became essential, with constant communication, observation, and mutual reliance dictating every move. Forbidden mistakes, ignoring subtle signs of illness, underestimating terrain, or misjudging weather conditions, were eliminated whenever possible, replaced with careful planning, teamwork, and adherence to strict protocols. Rejected instincts to push aggressively into unknown areas were tempered with caution, as the jungle's unpredictable hazards could erase a squad in moments. How the division balanced survival with mission objectives required not only physical stamina, but mental acuity, foresight, and resilience. Never had soldiers been forced to simultaneously endure environmental extremes, enemy threats, and logistical collapse with such intensity. Shocking incidents of sudden flooding, collapsing riverbanks, and wildlife attacks reinforced the omnipresent danger, reminding men that vigilance was their only safeguard. Secret strategies for rationing food, collecting safe water, and navigating hidden routes were constantly tested, refined, and enforced to prevent unnecessary loss. Forbidden shortcuts previously considered time-saving were scrapped in favor of slow, deliberate progress that prioritized survival. Rejected complacency and the illusion of control were replaced by acute awareness, disciplined movement, and trust in fellow soldiers. By midweek, signs of fatigue, illness, and mental strain became impossible to ignore, threatening both morale and operational capability. How men endured the relentless pressure, maintained cohesion, and continued their mission amidst mounting dangers became a testament to human determination. Never had such a combination of physical, psychological, and environmental adversity confronted a single division, making each decision a life-or-death gamble. Shocking glimpses of previous patrols' failures, abandoned gear, and signs of struggle served as constant reminders of the jungle's power and unpredictability. Secretly, commanders observed subtle behavioral changes, noting that stress, fear, and exhaustion could compromise judgment at any moment. Forbidden errors, misjudging river crossings, ignoring fatigue, or underestimating disease, were meticulously avoided, but the risk remained ever present. Rejected assumptions about predictable patterns of the environment forced constant adaptation, requiring every soldier to remain vigilant, resourceful, and disciplined. How the division confronted the impossible realities of Burma's jungle reflected not only military training, but the extraordinary resilience and ingenuity of men determined to survive against all odds. Never had such a lethal, silent, and omnipresent adversary tested human endurance with such relentless intensity. Shocking as it was, every misstep could erase lives, leaving only mystery behind, and forcing soldiers to navigate a lethal labyrinth with no margin for error. As the division pushed deeper into the jungle, the relentless pressure of nature and mission objectives intensified. Soldiers struggled with dehydration, fatigue, and constant exposure to tropical diseases that spread silently through the dense foliage. Forbidden attempts to shortcut the terrain could mean instant death, whether from hidden ravines, quicksand, or venomous wildlife. Rejected assumptions about safe paths were repeatedly proven false, and maps became little more than suggestions. How to maintain cohesion, morale, and operational effectiveness while navigating such an unpredictable environment became a daily, nerve-wracking challenge. Secret reconnaissance reports highlighted areas where the jungle had already claimed men, trails ending abruptly, abandoned equipment, and signs of struggle that told more than words ever could. Impossible conditions forced commanders to make agonizing decisions, push forward and risk lives, or pause and allow disease, hunger, and enemy forces to take their toll. Shocking fatigue, hallucinations, and mental strain revealed the fragility of human endurance, even among highly trained soldiers. Forbidden impulses to rush or ignore signs of danger were systematically suppressed, replaced with methodical caution and strict adherence to survival protocols. Rejected ideas of predictable outcomes emphasized that the jungle did not operate according to human logic. It demanded constant observation, adaptation, and humility. Never had a division been confronted with such an unyielding adversary, where every step carried hidden risk and each decision bore life or death consequences. Shocking environmental hazards, swollen rivers, hidden sinkholes, and aggressive wildlife served as omnipresent threats that tested every ounce of physical and mental stamina. Secret alliances within squads, careful resource management, and disciplined communication became vital tools for survival, as individual error could jeopardize the entire unit. Forbidden mistakes like underestimating dehydration, ignoring illness, or misjudging the terrain were rigorously avoided, yet danger lurked in every corner. Rejected reliance on conventional military strategies highlighted the necessity of improvisation, observation, and adaptability. How men endured these compounded threats while maintaining focus on their mission demonstrated the extraordinary resilience of human determination. Never had soldiers faced a combination of extreme environmental, psychological, and operational challenges with such relentless intensity. Shocking glimpses of failed patrols and abandoned gear underscored the perilous nature of every choice, every path, and every decision. Secretly, the jungle shaped their journey, dictating pace, forcing caution, and imposing limits that no commander could fully anticipate. Forbidden shortcuts, hasty maneuvers, and overconfidence were replaced by careful, deliberate action, ensuring survival where possible. Rejected assumptions about terrain, weather, and wildlife were replaced with acute awareness, continuous assessment, and precise teamwork. As days turned into week-long stretches of relentless challenge, signs of stress, exhaustion, and illness mounted, threatening cohesion and operational capability. How soldiers balanced fear, endurance, and mission objectives against an invisible yet lethal adversary became a daily study in human perseverance. Never had the army confronted such a silent, omnipresent enemy, one that did not fight with bullets, but with entropy, disorientation, and unyielding terrain. Shocking moments, from sudden storms to collapsing riverbanks, reminded men that survival required vigilance, adaptability, and the discipline to respect every element of the jungle. Secret observation, attention to detail, and constant collaboration allowed small victories, preventing total catastrophe, yet the overarching danger persisted. Forbidden complacency, impulsive action, and overconfidence were meticulously avoided, replaced by methodical movement, keen observation, and unwavering discipline. Rejected assumptions gave way to flexible tactics, patient progress, and careful planning, illustrating the profound impact of environmental mastery on survival. How the division navigated these compounded threats reflected both military skill and extraordinary human resilience, as men relied on intuition, training, and cooperation to endure the deadly challenges surrounding them. Never had the combination of isolation, environmental peril, and operational pressure been felt so acutely, shaping a narrative of struggle, adaptation, and survival in one of the deadliest jungles of World War II. On the morning of the 14th day, the division reached a clearing that would define their struggle for survival. Exhausted, dehydrated, and worn from relentless marches, they faced a critical decision: press forward into unknown terrain or attempt to consolidate in a precarious position. Forbidden options were evident. The dense jungle concealed hidden ravines, poisonous creatures, and the ever-present threat of disease. Rejected notions of immediate retreat were discarded, as backtracking risked exhaustion and disorientation. How one could coordinate hundreds of men under such extreme conditions required extraordinary leadership, ingenuity, and trust. Secret signals and hand gestures replaced verbal commands, preserving stealth and efficiency while maintaining cohesion. For impossible as it seemed, the division adapted, forming small agile units to navigate the treacherous terrain while maintaining the integrity of the larger formation. Shocking environmental hazards, unstable river crossings, collapsing soil, and sudden storms tested every ounce of skill, strength, and courage. Forbidden errors, such as misjudging footing or ignoring signs of fatigue, were systematically avoided, replaced with cautious, deliberate action. Rejected shortcuts or impulsive maneuvers gave way to careful, methodical progression, each step planned to minimize risk. Never had soldiers faced a scenario where coordination, endurance, and adaptability determined survival more than direct combat. Shocking determination became their weapon, as men relied on discipline, training, and teamwork to navigate the labyrinthine jungle. Secret strategies emerged organically, rotating leadership within squads, rationing water and food, and scouting ahead for signs of danger. Forbidden complacency, even for a moment, could be fatal, as the jungle's threats were ever present and invisible. Rejected assumptions about safety were replaced with constant vigilance, observation, and adaptation to unpredictable conditions. How the soldiers pressed forward, despite fatigue, fear, and uncertainty, became a testament to human resilience under extreme duress. Never had such a combination of environmental, psychological, and physical challenges been imposed on a unit, where every decision could tip the balance between life and death. Shocking moments punctuated the day. A soldier slipping into a hidden pit, a sudden flash flood sweeping equipment downstream, or the eerie silence following a failed recon patrol. Secret measures, ropes, markers, improvised bridges, allowed men to navigate some hazards safely, but risk remained omnipresent. Forbidden impulses to act hastily were restrained, replaced with calculated patience and meticulous observation. Rejected instincts to force progress or ignore subtle warning signs were overridden by discipline, leadership, and acute awareness. As the day wore on, the division encountered pockets of enemy resistance, though minor, that demanded both strategic engagement and cautious navigation. How men balanced survival, operational objectives, and the ever-present environmental threats became a test of endurance, cooperation, and mental acuity. Never had the soldiers faced an adversary so silent yet omnipresent, one that challenged every facet of human capability without firing a single shot. Shocking obstacles, from deep mud pits to venomous snakes, served as constant reminders of nature's lethal dominance. Secret coordination among squad leaders and scouts became the lifeline that allowed temporary safety, guiding the exhausted men toward relative security. Forbidden misjudgments, overconfidence, or neglect of the environment were avoided as much as possible, though every step carried potential danger. Rejected assumptions about the jungle's predictability reinforced the need for constant attention, teamwork, and adaptation. How the division endured this crucible, navigating both visible and invisible threats, demonstrated extraordinary fortitude and the fine balance between human skill and nature's omnipotence. Never had a unit been tested in such an intricate dance of survival, where intelligence, courage, and discipline intertwined with luck to determine the outcome. Shocking as the day's events unfolded, they marked the beginning of a critical turning point, setting the stage for a confrontation between human determination and the relentless power of the jungle. Secretly, the forest observed, its silent omnipresence shaping every movement, decision, and outcome for the men who dared traverse its deadly heart. By late afternoon, the division faced its most critical moment yet. Exhaustion weighed heavily on every soldier, muscles cramped from relentless marching, skin blistered from heat and humidity, minds frayed by fear and uncertainty. Forbidden risks, blind crossings, ignoring fatigue, or rushing through dangerous terrain were avoided as commanders insisted on deliberate, calculated movement. Rejected instincts to push forward recklessly were replaced with careful observation, small unit coordination, and adaptive navigation. How one could maintain morale and cohesion under such pressure became the defining challenge. Secret communication methods, Improvised signals and rotating leadership ensured that each squad could function independently while remaining integrated within the division's overall structure. Impossible as it seemed, these measures allowed the unit to survive moments that might have claimed lives otherwise. Shocking terrain, from hidden sinkholes to dense undergrowth, forced men to improvise constantly, constructing makeshift bridges, marking safe paths, and rationing dwindling supplies. Forbidden complacency, even for a minute, could be fatal. The jungle required constant vigilance. Rejected assumptions about the predictability of the environment gave way to adaptive strategies informed by observation, experience, and intuition. Never had men been tested so thoroughly, where survival demanded not just strength and courage, but acute perception, patience, and cooperation. Shocking obstacles continued to emerge: sudden rainstorms, swelling rivers, unseen pits, and aggressive wildlife that attacked with lethal efficiency. Secretly, soldiers learned to read subtle environmental cues, detecting changes in vegetation, animal behavior, and water flow to avoid danger. Forbidden errors, ignoring signs of dehydration, misjudging footing, or underestimating fatigue, were meticulously avoided. Rejected overconfidence was replaced with methodical progression, continuous reassessment, and reliance on small victories to maintain morale. As night approached, temporary camps were established, offering brief respite, though the threat of nocturnal predators, disease, and collapsing terrain remained. How men adapted to these conditions demonstrated ingenuity, resilience, and the ability to function under extreme duress. Never had such an invisible, omnipresent enemy dictated every movement and decision, testing every level of physical, mental, and emotional capacity. Shocking moments occurred even in these temporary shelters: a sudden landslide, a snake in a makeshift tent, or a flash flood threatening supplies, reminding soldiers that danger never truly rested. Secret collaboration, resource sharing, and mutual vigilance allowed the unit to preserve life, albeit precariously. Forbidden mistakes, overestimating water sources, underestimating terrain hazards, or failing to maintain watch, could result in instant catastrophe. Rejected shortcuts and hasty decisions were systematically replaced with careful planning, calculated risk, and attention to every detail of the environment. By the final hours of the day, men had endured nearly unimaginable strain, yet discipline, leadership, and adaptability carried them forward. How they survived this critical juncture became a testament to human perseverance, the subtle interplay of skill, observation, and courage against a relentless natural adversary. Never had the division confronted an enemy so silent, yet so powerful, where the jungle itself dictated pace, possibility, and survival. Shocking endurance was displayed in the smallest actions, reinforcing a crossing, signaling danger, conserving supplies, and maintaining cohesion. Secret knowledge of the terrain and the behavior of both flora and fauna allowed the soldiers to navigate the deadliest sections with minimal losses. Forbidden misjudgments, impulsive decisions, or disregard for subtle warning signs were avoided, replaced with deliberate observation and precise execution. Rejected assumptions about the safety of the environment ensured constant reassessment and vigilance, protecting men from hidden hazards. As darkness fell, the division remained alive but tested to the brink, a living testament to the brutal, unyielding power of Burma's jungle. How they continued to endure, adapt, and survive would ultimately define the legacy of this vanished division, highlighting the thin line between life and disappearance. Never had a test of endurance, judgment, and cohesion been so severe, nor a confrontation with nature so absolute. Shocking as these final movements of the day were, they set the stage for the ultimate reckoning, whether the division could emerge from the jungle intact or be swallowed completely by its relentless, silent force. Secretly, the forest watched, claiming nothing yet threatening everything, a merciless, patient adversary testing every decision, every breath, and every step. As the 14th night fell over the Burmese jungle, the division's ordeal reached its harrowing climax. Soldiers, drained of energy and worn to the limits of human endurance, faced a reality harsher than any battlefield engagement. Forbidden errors, from misjudging terrain to neglecting the signs of illness, could no longer be risked. Rejected instincts to push onward without caution were replaced with meticulous care, observation, and unity, How men balanced the desperate need for movement with the imperative of survival became the ultimate test of leadership, resilience, and human ingenuity. Secret efforts to consolidate the weary, reinforce morale, and ration scarce resources offered fleeting hope amidst an unforgiving environment. Impossible as it seemed, the division had endured 14 days in conditions that would have broken any unprepared group. Shocking losses occurred along the way. Soldiers claimed by disease, hidden quicksands, and relentless heat, but the majority persevered through discipline and sheer willpower. Forbidden panic was suppressed, replaced with deliberate, careful decision-making. Rejected illusions of control over the jungle gave way to acceptance of its power, respect for its hazards, and reliance on training and teamwork. Never had men experienced such an unrelenting combination of psychological, environmental, and physical stress, where the enemy was both visible and invisible, present and absent, active yet patient. Shocking endurance defined the final hours, navigating treacherous river crossings, avoiding venomous creatures, and improvising shelter from the elements while preserving dwindling supplies. Secret coordination allowed small groups to support one another, share knowledge, and maintain cohesion, transforming desperation into calculated survival. Forbidden misjudgments, overestimating strength, ignoring fatigue, or underestimating environmental hazards, were scrupulously avoided. Rejected assumptions about safety, predictability, and human limits became lessons written in sweat, injury, and survival instinct. How the division emerged from each challenge, with even a fraction of its men intact, highlighted the extraordinary resilience of human courage under unthinkable pressure. Never had a unit faced a confrontation so absolute, where nature itself dictated the outcome of every decision, step, and breath. Shocking moments of improvisation, adaptability, and leadership punctuated the division's progress, proving that training, cohesion, and determination could counter even the most relentless natural adversary. Secret techniques like improvised signals, careful rationing, and constant vigilance preserved life where chaos could have claimed it. Forbidden choices, impulsive actions, or momentary lapses in attention would have been fatal, yet the division endured, pushing human limits to an extraordinary extreme. Rejected ideas of guaranteed survival gave way to careful calculation, awareness, and respect for forces beyond human control. As the first light of dawn filtered through the dense canopy, the jungle revealed both mercy and its relentless dominion. How the soldiers emerged, scarred, exhausted yet alive, underscored the precarious nature of human endurance against a silent, omnipresent adversary. Never had a survival story been so extreme, where the absence of combat did not equate to safety, and the presence of life demanded constant vigilance, intelligence, and adaptability. Shocking resilience was displayed not in grand heroics, but in the daily relentless choices to observe, adapt, and preserve both life and unity amidst chaos. Secret records later recovered hinted at the precise methodical actions that had saved lives, from small tactical adjustments to the careful sharing of scarce water. Forbidden errors were avoided with near-perfect discipline, reflecting a combination of training, experience, and raw determination. Rejected shortcuts and risky maneuvers ensured the maximum possible survival rate under conditions that would have annihilated unprepared men. How 14 days of unimaginable trial shaped the soldiers' physical endurance, mental acuity, and emotional resilience became a testament to both human capacity and the silent, overwhelming power of the jungle. Never had an army unit been pushed to such extremes without direct combat, revealing the lethal nature of an environment capable of erasing men with patience and invisibility. Shocking unseen forces, disease, exhaustion, terrain, and wildlife defined the division's fate more than bullets ever could. Secret strategies, adaptive thinking, and disciplined survival were the true weapons that allowed men to emerge alive from the jaws of a deadly jungle. The 15th day dawned over Burma, and the jungle revealed its final verdict. Soldiers, haggard and worn beyond recognition, moved cautiously through the dense foliage, every step a negotiation with death itself. Forbidden complacency had no place here. A single misstep could mean disappearance into the merciless greenery. Rejected instincts of haste or overconfidence were replaced with acute awareness, collaboration, and patience. How one could maintain life, cohesion, and operational integrity after nearly 2 weeks of relentless hardship became a testament to human endurance. Secret shelters, improvised bridges, and careful observation allowed the division to continue advancing, despite exhaustion and environmental pressure. Impossible conditions, the unyielding heat, dense undergrowth, venomous creatures, and treacherous terrain had tested every skill, decision, and ounce of courage. Shocking losses had thinned the ranks, yet discipline, ingenuity, and perseverance ensured that survivors remained coherent, mobile, and determined. Forbidden shortcuts, rash decisions, and neglect of warning signs were avoided, replaced with methodical action and cautious progression. Rejected assumptions about control, predictability, and safety underscored the reality that survival depended on respect for the jungle and constant vigilance. Never had soldiers faced such an adversary, where the environment itself dictated the rhythm, outcome, and measure of endurance. Shocking resilience, displayed in the careful rationing of food, strategic navigation, and the maintenance of mental fortitude, became the defining factor between survival and disappearance. Secretly, the jungle imposed relentless tests. Flooded rivers, hidden pits, predatory wildlife, and suffocating humidity challenged every physical and mental limit. Forbidden errors, misreading terrain, ignoring fatigue, or underestimating threats, were meticulously avoided to preserve life. Rejected assumptions about human capability were replaced with extraordinary adaptability, patience, and resourcefulness. As the division finally neared recognizable terrain, the first signs of relief mixed with exhaustion, distant riverbanks, known landmarks, and the faint trace of supply routes promised salvation. How these men endured 14 days of isolation, environmental hostility, and constant danger revealed an unparalleled level of resilience and coordination. Never had survival been so dependent on continuous observation, adaptive thinking, and disciplined teamwork rather than combat prowess. Shocking stories emerged in whispers. Soldiers improvising water collection, constructing makeshift shelters, and navigating deadly obstacles with minimal resources. Secret acts of courage and ingenuity preserved life when conventional tactics offered no advantage. Forbidden indulgences, resting too long, rationing carelessly, or ignoring critical environmental signs were carefully avoided to ensure progress. Rejected assumptions about predictability taught men to trust experience, instinct, and the careful observation of nature's subtle cues. How the division emerged from the jungle intact, though diminished and exhausted, demonstrated the extraordinary capacity for endurance, adaptation, and survival against overwhelming odds. Never had a combination of isolation, natural hazard, and operational pressure so thoroughly tested human limits without a single direct combat encounter. Shocking though it was, the division's journey highlighted the fine balance between calculated strategy, courage, and respect for nature's unrelenting authority. Secret lessons later recorded and studied revealed the meticulous planning, resourcefulness, and human determination that allowed these soldiers to survive where countless others might have vanished. Forbidden mistakes were meticulously avoided. Rejected shortcuts and risky maneuvers gave way to deliberate, careful action. As the survivors reached safer ground, the jungle, patient and indifferent, receded, leaving behind scars, memories, and an unforgettable testament to human endurance. How these men would be remembered was shaped not by battle victories, but by their capacity to endure, adapt, and survive against a silent, omnipresent, and unforgiving adversary. Never had the measure of human resilience been so profoundly tested in the absence of direct combat. Shocking endurance, ingenuity, and discipline combined to ensure that, despite the jungle's lethal potential, life persisted, and the vanished division's story became legend. Secretly, the forest remained indifferent, waiting, an eternal adversary to all who dared challenge its domain. As the jungle finally gave way to the open terrain of Burma, the surviving soldiers paused, taking stock of what had been endured. Every man bore the visible and invisible scars of 14 relentless days, a testament to the unforgiving power of nature. Forbidden thoughts of despair had been suppressed through discipline, courage, and camaraderie. yet the memories of vanished comrades lingered like shadows in every step. Rejected illusions of control gave way to the reality that survival was a fragile earned triumph rather than a guarantee. How they had navigated treacherous rivers, dense foliage, and unpredictable wildlife while maintaining operational cohesion became the defining narrative of their ordeal. Secret strategies, meticulous planning, and small acts of ingenuity had kept them alive, proving that human determination could counter even the most relentless environmental adversary. Impossible as it had seemed, the division had endured, adapting to every obstacle, improvising in moments of crisis, and remaining disciplined against all odds. Shocking endurance, courage, and mental fortitude marked their passage, as every action, no matter how small, contributed to survival. Forbidden complacency and impulsive actions had been avoided, replaced with methodical progression, constant vigilance, and adherence to lessons learned in the heart of the jungle. Rejected assumptions about predictability, safety, and capability had been shattered, replaced with acute awareness, cooperation, and respect for the invisible forces that governed survival. Never had soldiers faced such an environment, where each decision, observation, and adaptation could mean life or death, and yet they emerged intact, forever changed. Shocking accounts of resourcefulness emerged in whispered recollections, collecting water from hidden streams, constructing temporary shelters from scant materials, and navigating without maps in terrain that defied understanding. Secret coordination and trust between squads proved crucial, as individual mistakes could have resulted in disaster. Forbidden errors were meticulously avoided. Rejected shortcuts gave way to cautious, deliberate movement, preserving life amidst the omnipresent threats. How they maintained morale under constant fear, deprivation, and uncertainty illustrated the extraordinary power of human resilience, camaraderie, and discipline. Never had an army unit's survival been dictated more by environmental mastery, observation, and adaptability than by conventional combat prowess. Shocking reflections emerged as the soldiers considered the lost men, vanished equipment, and the relentless jungle that had tested every limit. Secret lessons recorded in journals and survivor accounts revealed the intricate balance between human ingenuity and nature's unyielding dominion. Forbidden complacency, reckless action, and overconfidence were replaced with vigilance, precision, and careful strategy. Rejected assumptions about endurance and survival had been redefined by the brutal realities of the Burmese jungle, where even minor errors could have devastating consequences. How the survivors would carry this experience forward remained uncertain, but the story of their perseverance became a benchmark for understanding human courage and adaptability in extreme conditions. Never had the stakes of survival been so absolute, where the environment itself was the arbiter of fate, and the line between life and disappearance was razor-thin. Shocking courage, ingenuity, and resilience ensured that despite the jungle's relentless power, these soldiers would live to recount their ordeal. Secret, silent, and patient, the forest had tested every skill, every decision, and every ounce of willpower. Forbidden panic was suppressed, replaced with observation, discipline, and mutual reliance. Rejected assumptions about control, predictability, and strength were replaced with humility, respect, and the relentless pursuit of survival. As the survivors moved toward safety, the jungle receded, leaving a profound lesson. Life in the most extreme conditions depended on awareness, adaptability, and unyielding determination. How the vanished division's story would endure in history became clear, not as a tale of combat glory, but as a testament to the extraordinary power of human resilience against nature's silent, omnipresent, and unrelenting force. Never had survival demanded so much from ordinary soldiers, transforming them into living legends of endurance, courage, and ingenuity. Shocking yet triumphant, their journey through 14 days of isolation, danger, and environmental extremity would echo for generations, a testament to the delicate balance between human skill and the merciless power of the jungle. Secretly, the forest remained unchanged, indifferent, yet its lessons immortalized in the men who survived to tell the story. The survivors, emerging from the jungle, carried with them the weight of 14 days that had tested every limit of human endurance. Exhaustion, hunger, and the memory of vanished comrades were etched into their faces, silent witnesses to a trial that had reshaped every notion of survival. Forbidden thoughts of surrender or despair had been suppressed, replaced by discipline, awareness, and the unyielding determination to live. Rejected assumptions about the jungle's predictability had been replaced with acute observation, patience, and respect for its silent dominance. How the men had coordinated, supported one another, and maintained operational cohesion in such an environment revealed the extraordinary adaptability of human beings under extreme stress. Secret strategies, including makeshift shelters, improvised bridges, and discreet signals, had ensured survival, transforming the invisible jungle into a navigable, if still lethal, adversary. Impossible as it had seemed, the soldiers endured, relying on every skill, observation, and ounce of resilience at their disposal. Shocking endurance, ingenuity, and courage defined the final hours, as men overcame fatigue, dehydration, and the constant threat of hidden dangers to finally reach safety. Forbidden errors were avoided through meticulous planning, collective vigilance, and trust, ensuring that each step forward was measured and precise. Rejected shortcuts, overconfidence, and impulsive actions gave way to careful adaptation, constant reassessment, and unwavering discipline. Never had a division faced an adversary so silent, yet so omnipresent, where every movement, observation, and decision could determine life or disappearance. Shocking acts of improvisation and resourcefulness, using vines to construct ladders, collecting water from hidden streams, and navigating treacherous terrain without maps, demonstrated the combination of skill, intelligence, and determination required to survive. Secret collaboration within and between squads preserved life, reinforced morale, and ensured cohesion under circumstances that could have shattered the unit completely. Forbidden complacency, recklessness, or neglect of environmental cues was consistently avoided, replaced with deliberate, calculated, and patient action. Rejected assumptions about the limits of human endurance were replaced with real-time learning, adaptation, and resilience under the most extreme conditions imaginable. How the soldiers emerged from 14 days of relentless jungle warfare, survival trials, and psychological strain illustrated not only physical endurance, but the profound capacity for courage, ingenuity, and disciplined action. Never had survival demanded such a comprehensive application of mental, emotional, and physical faculties, nor tested ordinary soldiers to such extraordinary heights. Shocking perseverance defined the journey's conclusion. Every obstacle overcome, every challenge survived, and every decision carefully weighed against the invisible, omnipresent threats of the jungle. Secretly, the forest had been both the adversary and the measure of human capability, its unyielding presence shaping every outcome without a single direct confrontation. Forbidden shortcuts or errors had been meticulously avoided, ensuring that discipline, strategy, and cooperation triumphed over chaos, fear, and environmental hostility. Rejected illusions of control, safety, and predictability were replaced with humility, observation, and respect, demonstrating the critical role of adaptability and intelligence in extreme survival. As the division finally reached open ground, the significance of their ordeal became clear. They had endured conditions that could have erased entire units, yet through resilience, skill, and cohesion, they had survived. How these soldiers would be remembered was not for battles won with weapons, but for an extraordinary test of endurance, judgment, and human capacity against one of the deadliest environments on Earth. Never had the jungle been such a decisive adversary, silent yet lethal, indifferent yet absolute, demanding every ounce of skill, courage, and resolve from those who dared traverse it. Shocking though the ordeal had been, it became legend, a testament to human endurance, adaptability, and the delicate balance between survival and disappearance. Secret lessons learned, recorded in the memories of survivors, would echo through military history as proof that the human spirit, when guided by discipline, courage, and ingenuity, could prevail even in the face of relentless, invisible, and omnipresent threats. Forbidden complacency had been vanquished, replaced by vigilance, skill, and the extraordinary will to survive. Rejected assumptions about control, predictability, and human limits had been shattered and rewritten in the endurance of 14 days that would never be forgotten. How the vanished division's story became immortalized was through the courage, resilience and ingenuity of those who endured, a testament to the silent power of nature and the extraordinary capacity of human beings to survive against insurmountable odds. Never had such a story been told, where survival itself became the ultimate triumph, leaving a legacy of endurance, adaptation, and quiet heroism that would resonate for generations. Shocking, humbling, and awe-inspiring. The division's ordeal in Burma stands as one of history's most extraordinary tales of survival, a story where nature's omnipotent presence was met with unyielding human courage, intelligence, and determination.